All right, let's go ahead and get started with InDesign. So a fair number of the projects this semester are going to be exploring InDesign so that you get a little bit more comfortable with it. And if you're already comfortable with Illustrator, if you're already comfortable with Photoshop, you're going to ease right into InDesign. Our interface is exactly the same. It does have some custom presets. You can go ahead and make a new document. Surprise, it looks exactly like Illustrator and Photoshop. So for our class, as mentioned in the other ones, my classes are predominantly print. So if you're like, I'm not sure quite what I want to create, go ahead and hit that print preset. So all of our projects will have sizes attached to it. Anything that you're just sort of goofing off and demoing, I don't care what size you work on. Letter is usually a good default. Since that's what our printers are defaulted to. But you can choose landscape, you can choose portrait, you can choose how many pages you need. And our first main project is just going to be one page. Then project 3 and 4 are going to be multi-pages. You can decide if you want those pages to face or not. So I'm just going to, for example, go ahead and make 5 pages. And it's going to start on number 1, and I am going to have facing pages. So let's say this is a 5-page magazine spread. So when I hit new, the facing pages are these, the ones that are side by side. And what's nice with this mode is, let's say you are designing for a newspaper or magazine. If you want to jump your story across from each other, the facing pages is going to make that doable. So going back, turning facing pages off. Now it will remember everything, just like the other programs. And this one is going to stack it. So if you're going to have, say, a magazine article that starts with 2-page spread and a photo is going to go over both of those pages, this one is going to make it a little bit harder to design. So most designers, making it again, are just going to go ahead and choose a facing page. But for our look-see today, I'm just going to take it back down to 1. You can choose the size of your margins. Now, in InDesign, I think this is what gets confusing for people, is the margins, because they're like this little pink line the whole time, and you're always going to see them. So if you have issues ignoring that, turn them to 0 so that when you're working, it isn't interrupting your site. But what I'm actually just going to recommend, it's sort of like the invisibles in Photoshop and in Illustrator. You just slowly learn to ignore the guides and grids under it. Bleeds is our external or exterior margin. Our first project will have a bleed to this, and a relatively typical size is going to be 1/4 of an inch. I'll make that on the next one so you can see it. Not a whole lot of people use the slugs. Think of a slug as an extra margin beyond that margin, and this is where typically in-house designers and creative directors make comments to each other. So 1, where we have our margins set to normal. Then I'm going to make another one where we have no margins. And if you hit that little link, it links all of them to be 0. So you can see that pink line just went to the edge. You have all of the white artboard as your space. The margin is just there to say, if you have really important text, maybe don't go beyond this line unless it's like a purposefully enlarged bold header that is going to be slightly off, then that's fine. When I work, I totally ignore that little pinky purple line, but some people do have problems with that. So if you find yourself having that problem, you can set those margins to 0, but you are going to have to pay attention to your type, because some places, and this is why I recommend that you get used to it, are going to require that you have a margin. So if you're designing business cards, or our game project that's coming up, our games will actually have a safety margin, like you cannot go typographically past this. Well, if you have that turned off, you're not going to see it. So it is going to make life a little bit difficult. So in these early stages, be aware they're there, but also know that, it's there for a reason. Bleeds. so that we have that under our belt. They are typically around 1/4 of an inch. You can click that little link thing because they're all going to be the same. If a project dictates that it has a bleed on it, you're going to see it, and they use the red line that's actually in your paste board. So our margin, and let me redo that document because it took our margins off, and I do like my margins on. I'm going to set them back up. All right, there we go. So there's our margin. So that's where we want our type to stop. This is where the paper would get cut if it is going through an offset, and that bleed is that little bit of safety so that if it wiggles during the guillotine cutting process, that you're not going to see the color of the paper. So if I was designing half of this page to be blue, and I'm going to set my window workspace to essentials. I want to be able to see everything like normal. I'm not sure why the new update made everything so watered down, but you're going to want it in window workspace essentials classic for whenever you're learning. That way you have all of this at your arsenal, and your screen might look a little bit different than me because I do work with InDesign quite a bit, so my order might be just slightly different than yours, so don't worry about that. So if I wanted a magenta box on the bottom, oops. All right, a magenta box on the bottom. All right, there we go. And a blue box up top, or cyan, because you can have whatever color you want. I'm going to send that to the back then because I want, I want that magenta to have the lead on the page. When you design with a bleed, go to the bleed. Just know that whatever's, zooming in, whatever's on your artboard out is not going to probably, unless it wiggles during the cutting, it's not going to be a part of the design. It's the artboard inward that's your design. When you hit your W, it's going to give you a preview, and you can see what happened is our bleeds actually disappeared because this is giving you your print cut out preview mode. So this is like you print it out at the poster shop. This is what it's going to look like. This is the view, and then that has the bleeds. So it's sort of like the margins. You can see those margins disappear too. You need a little bit of time getting used to that also. So when I design, I typically design with all my preview, I can see all the invisibles, but I do a quick glimpse to see how it would look like when it prints. If you have something that's a photo in here, I just want you to be aware of this early on also. InDesign sort of functions similarly to, strangely enough, how it saves its files. It's similar to Dreamweaver. So when you build a web page, you create a folder on your thumb drive, and you have like your index.html, aboutme.html, whatever it is. And you have an images folder, and then all of your web pages images go into there. That is how this program functions. When I put a photo in here, it has to always stay in the same spot. So step 1 of InDesign, set your folder up first. Get an image folder for that project, and all of your images will go into there. I can guarantee you at one point in your design life early on, you are going to mess this up. Everything's going to mislink, and you have deleted everything, and your file will not work. So early on with file management. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pretend I'm on my thumb drive. I don't have a thumb drive with me right now. Project 1 would go into my folder. I would open that folder, Shift Command N, images. All my images for that project are going to go in this folder. So I already had Pexels up. You guessed it, you knew there was going to be a cat. So I'm going to download the kitten. I'm just going to save it. All right, there's the kitten. All right, so for our first pretend project, I'm going to put that kitten in there so that it will always stay in that spot. Keep it this way. Have it on your thumb drive, have it on your Dropbox, have it on your external, set it up, and don't move it. because if it moves, you're going to be sad. So here's what happens. All right, I'm just going to close this one out. So if I want to place a photo, we have these two boxes, and I'm going to go over the interface slower in the next video. But I just want you to see why it's important to put these there. All right, my project one, images, there's that. The cat, I'm not even going to rescale it. If I move it and go back in, it now has under your links this little angry stop sign says missing. Double click to relink. Well, if you've deleted everything, you're just going to have to go back and find all of those images again and put them in the folder and relink them one by one, which for a one-page document might not be much. But what happens if you're working on an 800-page physics textbook and you've lost all the images? So early on, I'm just going to slide it back in so that it knows where to find it, and you'll see what happens. Yay, there's no warning symbol. It's going to print fine. Just have everything set up right in the beginning. So a folder for each of your projects, each of those folders having an image folder and all of your images in said folder. And your life will be much better for it. One thing you are going to notice, everyone panics about this. It's not clear. It's bitmapped. I know I downloaded the high-res version, but why are there all these pixels here and it looks awful? Yes, because it's functioning in the same styling mechanisms of Dreamweaver. This program is just giving you a quick glimpse of, hey, this is what it'll basically look like, but don't worry, it will be clear because it's all in that folder. One-page document, you can change the resolution to work high-res. That's fine, but let's go back to the 800-page physics notebook. If I have an 800-page physics textbook with thousands and thousands and thousands of photos, I guarantee you at the end of your pagination of that, your computer is going to explode. So it just gives you a quick little preview mode for this. Later on, I will show you how, when we're dealing with images specifically, how to go about, changing this for just a one-pager. But just like our margins, there's our margin. If I want it to be a full-page cat, let's just go ahead and make a full-page cat. I have to get used to ignoring, oh, he's so cute, ignoring those pink lines, and I also have to get used to ignoring the fact that it is going to be very, very fuzzy whenever I'm working. Just simply ignore it. It's going to print fine. Do not worry about that. All right, so for this one, it was just getting used to making a new document, learning what margins are, learning what your bleeds are, and also how to get your documents folders set up so that you won't have linking issues later down the line. In the next video, I'm going to go over all of our tools and all of our palettes.